Welcome to the Images Retail Middle East Virtual Roundtable 7.0. She means business, brought to you by our exclusive partner, Visa. In today's session, we will predominantly discuss how the 4 Ps, people, place, process, and purpose can support business recovery. I'm Justina Eitzinger, the Chief Operating Officer at Images RetailME Group. And on behalf of the entire team, it gives me immense pleasure to welcome all of you joining us today to witness this power-packed, all-female session with some of the strongest and most influential leaders in retail. Being the only 16 plus years old B2B retail intelligence multimedia brand in the region, RetailME presents synergies and opportunities for all verticals of the retail industry, from brick to clicks and everything in between. And that is exactly what we aim to achieve today, to bring retail leaders to start enriching conversations, as well as to foster leadership development for our subscribers and attendees by providing an unparalleled mix of events, content, and elite connections. Shruthi, I invite you to moderate an incredible session and take over the floor. Over to you.
Thanks so much, Justina, for the lovely intro. And I must tell you, I am beyond excited to be here today with this amazing panel of speakers, amazing panel of powerful, inspirational women. And I must say, I also need to thank all of you attendees who've joined us today on this panel, taken the time out to be here from your busy schedules. So thank you, but let me tell you, this is totally going to be worth your while. Now, across the board, this has been a momentous year for us all. Retail has never faced so many changes or challenges, and these in turn has driven innovation and fueled a huge acceleration in what were just emerging trends at the beginning of last year. However, one particular trend that I would love to see changed or improved would be the percentage of female retail chief executives. In an industry where 85% of all purchasing decision or the purchases themselves are made and influenced by women, what is happening at the top? Only 12.5% of apparel and retail apparel companies in the Fortune 1000 are led by women. Now, not saying that things aren't improving, but they need to improve at a much faster rate so that it's not just these women in retail, but also the entire retail sector and the ecosystem can benefit out of having women in the helm of things. We have all of the studies and figures to support that companies with gender diverse leadership return more, fail less, and are better suited to today's business model and business environment, especially one that is most dependent on attracting female consumers. So today we see how the retail experts who are already in the leadership roles plan on changing this narrative, changing this landscape, and share their expertise on the industry that they are both intellectually and empathetically well versed with. Thank you so much for joining us here today. And Kalika, I think I'm going to start with you now. It's been a very, very interesting year, as you know, and we've seen Visa has come out with some very interesting insights, reports, surveys, etc. On the basis of that, I'd like to know if you can give me a quick overview on the retail landscape as we see today, as of January 2021, and what would the prediction for 2021, the rest of the year, be?
Hi, Shruthi. Thanks for that lead-in. So undeniably, the retail landscape theme established in 2020, no surprise, was e-commerce, and will continue to be. Difficult to predict specifics, but let's give it a shot with the data that we have and read between the lines as far as possible. What we saw looking back was that even the most traditional face-to-face categories have been shaken up with the clear realization that digital end-to-end business model is actually now rapidly become a part of BAU. So it's no longer a novelty, it is absolutely a requirement. And this shift over the past few months has been, if I might use the term, pandemic shift, because it was pan-geo, it was pan-segment, it was pan-retail vertical. Really no one and no category was left untouched. So it pushed everyone from physical into digital pretty rapidly. In most cases, if not all, there is really no going back. So our research does indicate that this trend will continue across segments as well as sectors. transformation to going online was huge for some, but that was the beginning also of a multi-stage process. So it's not that the transformation is done and is behind us and, let's get on with things in a pretty normal environment. It's accompanied with multi-stages of change, with increasing customer expectations on UX and UI. So we'll talk a little more about that in the subsequent sections of this discussion. But the same consumer who tentatively explored contactless payments just a few months back or shopped hesitantly online for the very first time has rapidly adjusted to this new reality. And they now need a seamless experience where the payment moment is just embedded and built in naturally into whatever it is that they seek to do. And that raises expectations and demands from retailers, from UX, UI manufacturers, from people such as ourselves, as Visa, who play across the ecosystem. It's a perfectly reasonable ask from the consumer. It's going to require a lot of investment, and we have some data to share in that area as well. So combining some of the COVID exit trajectory research we have, as well as other published data, what we find is there were a significant number of first-timers across various categories, including specifically grocery and pharmacy, as Halima will tell us later. While these behavior patterns posed a challenge, people rose to the challenge, and it was interesting that it was not necessarily just the large retailers who rose to the challenge. The small ones did as well, and we have some data to back that up. It was a struggle in the beginning, but then they came together and they've rapidly made the change. However, we still have almost 60% of businesses in the UAE claiming that they're still adapting to a changing environment. Yeah? And that goes back to the fact that it's not a one-time change. It's a step change, and it's going to take time to really get to where the customer wants us to. And then the moment we get there, they'll want something more. So it is really a continuous investment. Going back to the earlier theme I talked about, it will be in product as well as continued process innovation, not only the front end, but the back end logistics as well. Marketing, which, if I might read between the lines, would include consumer education. Because like I said, we touch as Visa different parts of the ecosystem, and that's where a lot of the focus is still really investing, is in terms of education, as well as customer experience, which means different things across different categories. We talked a little bit about merchants. So let's take an example from Saudi, where more than half the merchants, 54% of them, said that they had invested in an e-commerce platform specifically for COVID. But they do not plan to step back or stop there. They will invest more, because 68% of them said that they expect their consumers' use of e-commerce platforms to continue increasing post-COVID and not revert back to normal. When it comes to small businesses as well, there has been increased investment in new forms of payment. So in the summer, we had done one wave of the survey among small businesses, where 67% of those surveyed said that they have adopted new and different forms of payment beyond cash. And that has now gone up to as much as 80% plus. Visa will be publishing another report in the next few days, and that will have many more details on back to business. What about the merchants who are already digitally present? Even they've claimed that there has been an increase on their online activity as much as 20%. So they've benefited as well. Looking beyond the crisis, in the UAE, the outlook seems quite positive. Although the recovery back to pre-COVID levels is likely to be more around 2022. But almost 1 in 5 companies at this point in time are already talking about the fact that they are thriving in the new environment. So it's not necessarily that they're back to pre-COVID business levels, but they are improving, increasing, meeting the challenges, and investing in the right areas. So getting ready to get back to pre-COVID levels next year, 2022. And it's almost 90% of the companies in the UAE who were surveyed claim that their expectation is 2022, they'll be back to normal levels, as opposed to compared to 8 out of 10 globally. So slightly more positive than the global outlook. So really, when it comes to digital, the change is here to stay. Many new players will continue to emerge and gain share, while some of the market leaders might have bigger challenges because they have legacy systems, and to change those requires much bigger investments than a new player investing in a new system. Net-net, the consumers will be the winners. And that, we believe, is always a good thing, because we really have to go where the consumer leads us. Also, just Shruthi touching upon the theme of this forum, women in the workforce and women in business. So suffice to say that, as you said, plenty has been done, but plenty more still needs to be done. And we were discussing that in our warm-up just before this session. Just a few sound bites here from PwC research, which is very interesting, has a lot more data, but I just picked out a few which stood out for me. Almost $600 billion lost just in MENA due to legal and social barriers for employment of women. And that's a significant amount in any economy. When surveyed and asked about whether they were treated equally to men when it comes to promotions, 56% of women felt that they were. So that still leaves quite a significant proportion who felt that they were not. The proportion who felt that they were equally treated was higher in the UAE at 66%, and yet not as high as it really should be. So plenty more to be done. Interestingly enough, when asked the question, and the survey is a very balanced one, which includes male colleagues as well as women, that do employers support women who return to work after taking a career break? 55% of males agreed to this. And interestingly for me, for women, the number was lower at 44%. So there's also the perception gap in terms of how much is enough. And it's also women themselves as, as individuals, as a set, as a group. There are things that we need to do in terms of looking inward. And I can definitely speak for myself. Over the years, that has increasingly happened more and more. But as a group, there's so much more research now. There's another piece I was reading from Harvard, which talks about occupational sorting. So many of us women tend to fall prey to this and drop out or not raise our hands for some of the higher paying roles in some of the industries which we ourselves define as more male dominated or better suited to men, which could be things like technology, for example. A lot is being done by various companies to address that. And at the same time, I think forums like this need to also openly talk about these challenges for the next generation, for people out there who are listening, not just for women, but for men, to acknowledge the fact that this might happen. And if you do have strong performers on your team, then this might be a subconscious filter that you're facing sometimes. And we need everyone's help to overcome that. As you said, an inclusive environment is the best business environment.
Absolutely,
So that's
Kalika.
handing back to you.
Such great insights. You've spoken about so many topics right here. But some of the points that we will get to is, of course, everything around women that you've just mentioned right now. And we'll get to that in the second part of our conversation. But you started with a phrase, pandemic shift, like you mentioned. So Sara, let me bring you into the conversation now. You started a number of ventures in 2020. You already were involved in a number of ventures prior to that. What I would like to know is, would you say that diversifying your portfolio as an entrepreneur was a sort of safety net to ensure that you survive and you're still in this sort of environment, irrespective of what happens, considering how ambiguous and how uncertain conditions have been in 2020?
First of all, hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. Second of all, diversifying my portfolio was not for the purpose of surviving, because that means I'm just trying different things to see what works. But I am passionate about what I do. If I'm not passionate, I will not do it. But diversifying my profile was basically, it's how my mentality works as an entrepreneur, is that I live once. So I want to try everything. I want to know what I'm good at, what I'm not good at. And this is why I diversified. I'm a risk taker. I like to try new things. I want to do different things. And while I was doing that, the pandemic was growing and it happened. Of course, everyone was affected. The biggest companies in the world was affected. But I believe when things like this happen, pandemics or like recessions or these kind of problems, it's like a purge to wipe out businesses that are not changing their business model to a futuristic one, and to take them off and to make space for new ones. So right now, it was not hard for me to raise money during the pandemic, because there are a lot of people still investing, trying to find out what works there. everything went fine, I made sure that every business I am starting solves a problem. And that's what investors like. And that's actually what works. Because if we look at all the most successful businesses like Airbnb, Uber, and all these businesses, they solve a problem that we have. Making it more convenient, making it more easy, helping people do things. So when you are an entrepreneur, it's not about just having enough money to start a business. It's not just having great ideas and make them come to life. Entrepreneurship is a personality. Entrepreneurship is I think it's a French term that means you'll do whatever it takes to reach what you want. So when this happened, a lot of my businesses were affected completely. Like if the biggest businesses in the world that have multi-million-dollar companies, they could not survive with all the money they have. How would like businesses that are like medium and small survive? So I was affected badly. I've even recently invested in a company, like a lot of money before the pandemic, like a month before the pandemic, and then it happened and now the money is stuck. So you don't stop just because things are not working. You keep going as an entrepreneur. It's basically an instinct in you. It's a personality. You want to do more. You want to try. And I remember being asked, like, are you worried that your businesses are not doing well right now? Are you worried that things are not going the way you want and should be? And I was like, no, I'm not, because if something shuts down, I am on to the next thing, on to the next thing. These things don't scare me. And I think this is what the business that's most of the businesses that survived, if you look at the co-founders and you look at the owners of the businesses and you sit and speak to them, they don't get stuck in a position where, oh, what do I do now? No, they go like, okay, how can we switch everything and move forward to a more futuristic business model? Some of my companies I had to shut down, but some of my companies I had to completely change the skin of the company to fit in a futuristic model. So yes, I did diversify my profile. I went into tech. I'm going again. I used to have a restaurant. I sold it, but now I'm going back into F&B again, although there's a pandemic, because I believe that with what happened, the consumer behavior changed. We will never be who we were pre-COVID, because this is like it's like a third eye got opened in people and the consumers. We are more aware of our health, more aware of our priorities. Now we know a lot more about life, and we expect different things from as a consumer, which changed the whole mindset, and which is very challenging for businesses, because we need to know how to reach the consumer again, because doing it the traditional way is so rude right now. Like a lot of companies kept on advertising the traditional way they always did, and people got offended. So we have to take into consideration the consumer behavior, how they feel, how they think, what are they expecting. A lot of emotional intelligence should be injected in all the businesses right now, because we are going through an emotional phase. And you can see that a lot of companies woke up to that concept, and it's part of their business model now, like compensating clients. Companies who had return policies completely changed their return policies. So a lot of things are changing to make the consumer feel like we are there for you. We want to take care of you, because this is what they're expecting right now. So the people who are going to survive are the ones that are going to create that shift. The people who are going to survive are the people that are not in an intimate relationship with their business, where, oh, I cannot change my business model. I'm not going to adapt to this. My business is like that, and I'm going to stay like that. You can't have a relationship with your business in that way, which is unhealthy. You got to let it go. You got to be able to make a change. You got to be open to change and all that. And if it doesn't work, you keep trying. If it doesn't work, you move to the next thing. And this is what entrepreneurship is about. I diversified my profile, and I realized that some things still don't work, and I realized that some other things work. But whatever I do, I'm always trying to solve a problem. And this is how you stay surviving in the industry, basically.
And that is exactly how you learn, right? You need to try out different things to understand. And especially right now with the consumer demands and consumer wants and needs and desires shifting so much, you just never know. It's a very unpredictable environment. Donna, coming to you though, you've had a pandemic shift as well, haven't you? It probably was purely coincidental that it happened in 2020. But again, the entertainer, which was the go-to for everyone who just wanted to get out, either for leisure or dining experiences, and then you sold the entertainer, and now you are in the mainstream luxury retail space, and all of this happened last year during a pandemic. So I'd like to know from you, what was your thinking at that time? Why did you think that this was the right time to sell one and take on another?
Yeah, thank you, Shruthi. So with the entertainer, I actually sold majority 2 years ago. And it was actually during the pandemic that I actually sold the other 15%, believe it or not. And so I've always wanted to go into swimwear, and everyone has goals and dreams, and you have to have that passion to be able to succeed in something. That's rule number one, you have to love it. So I wanted to start a swimwear. So I went and sourced all my international staff, of whether it be creatives, shops, whatever it may be, to put together the brand. And during the pandemic, we were actually always on track. So we were actually never opening mid-year. So when the pandemic and all the lockdowns happened, the only thing that really affected us was we couldn't be in the office, and we just had to be a bit agile and change things around. So we were always launching end of August, and also to open up our flagship store at MOE, that actually lacked around about 3 months. We would have been open a little bit before that. But being positive, there was much bigger problems in the market, and you just had to really control what you can control, and that was it. So
you mentioned MOE. Can I just ask you, as a retailer, what has your relationship with the malls been like?
Yeah, I mean, look, to be honest, anyone who's dealt with a MAF mall or MOE, I mean, they're very hard to get into. So I took it as a huge compliment, being on the ground floor as well, that we were able to get in there. They were very, very good to deal with. They were very efficient. They're extremely professional. There is a lot of red tape. If you're going into any store at MOE, they have adhered to every health and safety rule, to every building rule, to everything. They've got all their permits, policies in place. So they're probably one of the hardest malls and companies to deal with. But saying that, when I say hard, it means more professional. So I love dealing with them. They were great. They were efficient, and we really pushed each other. We opened up a store in 6 weeks. I think we were the quickest store ever to open in MOE. Because we wanted the pre-Christmas trade. So we really pushed. But saying that, when we were doing Caha Capo, the challenging part for us was actually the fits. It was the trying on, because we weren't in the office, we were getting samples. So it was me and my team, we were trying on over Zoom, all the cuts, all the fabrics. So, I mean, it was really exciting, and it was fun at the same time, and you have to really make it fun. And, there were some things I'd have to send back 4 or 5 times. And, the fit in the fabric was really important to me. I mean, all of it's Italian fabric. We're made out of the same factory as Sea Folly. So we were really, really about the fit, the fabric, and having fun. And we'd adhered to that the whole way through. We launched online first at the end of August. So coming from entertainer, I have quite a good knowledge of, data and online and whatnot with that industry. And then I've had some retail stores before in the past. We have Dawson Sports at Mercato, and I used to be in retail as well. So that was my goal then, really just to drive our sales before Christmas. That Christmas trade, and anyone who's in retail knows timing is everything, and location is everything as well. So look, was it perfect? No. But are we happy? Yes.
Great. You seem to have had a lot of fun while setting up Caha Capo, but Halima, I want to know from you, being in the essentials sector, where it's been chaotic, especially in the beginning of the pandemic, where there was panic buying happening. We all know what happened with the toilet paper. There was just a lot of hoarding happening, etc. So at that time, what I would like to know from you is, what did you do when it came to response? How did you have to restructure your operations to meet with this sudden over demand, and then a peak and a trough, and that just kept happening inconsistently? So what did you have to do? How did you respond? What was your restructure plan?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to speak on this. And yes, e-commerce and Kibsons has got a lot of attention and limelight this year. Certainly something we did not expect at the beginning of the year, and not that we had a second to think about during those lockdown days. So just let me go a step back. Like Kibsons has been around in the UAE for nearly 4 decades. So as a company, we were not new to either the country or the industry. But what happened is about almost 4 years ago, when we started the e-commerce division. And I remember back then, people used to think Jamal's wife has gone crazy because she wants to, now do punnet sales instead of container sales, which was kind of like, okay. But the reality is, just like what Sara said, it was about passion, and it was about, we really wanted to make premium quality fresh produce affordable, for families who cared about eating healthy, right? So it was not really a business plan. We didn't come from a point of a business savvy organization. Everything was driven by a deep understanding of our customer needs. So there was a lot of empathy within the team as to why we were running this business and what was it for. So come pandemic, come lockdown, if you think about it, our team that had grown organically over these months and years, with no essential competition pressure as such, was now in a position, right, guys, if you really are passionate about this, how are you going to handle this huge influx, right, on the demand side? And a few things were happening there. Number one, even before we came down to operations, we had to think about food security and food safety. So we had to make some extremely bold decisions on procuring food at a point where flights were shutting down, things were very difficult to access. But the fact that Kibsons had been in the industry for so long, and we had all those relationships across the planet for so many decades, we were able to kind of call that in and secure food and at prices, because our goal was not to kind of say, all right, this is a good chance, let's make a lot of money. No, on the contrary, we actually were buying by air and giving sea prices to the local community because we didn't want to take advantage of people. So we wanted to do the right thing, right? So that's how it started from a procurement perspective. And down under operations, we were a family-based team. So, I mean, it overwhelms me even now when I think about those days in my head, because the pickers, the drivers, the team just came together, and we served as frontline workers. The drivers put themselves to risk. Nobody in Kibsons took a day off for 3 months. And that's huge. I mean, at the number of people that are working here, for everyone to kind of step up and say, yeah, we're going to work over 12 hours and make sure, huge amount of empathy within the team. It makes me proud, and it makes me feel like, wow, before we've done service to the community, we've actually built a fantastic team that understands why we are here. What is this whole entrepreneurship all about? And that's what the consumers felt. So every delivery, I think that's what our consumers felt, not only during the lockdown, but to date. That's what sets us apart as such. So yeah, it was intense. From a structure point of view, I think because we had a slow organic foundation for so long, we just had to kind of, expand it quickly, and all our experience came into play, isn't it? I mean, I think my prediction was to go back from not being same day during the lockdown days to being same day in about 3 weeks. That was my expectation, but we made it in 6 weeks. But still, I thought that was kind of a record hit given the massive. Okay, and in terms of the consumers, I mean, look, we grew from numbers, yes, because there were people, when it comes to fresh produce, they want to actually touch and feel their fresh produce, right? I mean, that's one thing that you kind of are reluctant to trust grocery delivery service as such. We don't know what the cabbage is going to look like or my tomatoes are going to. But I think people didn't have a choice in pandemic. So there you go. We were just exploding based on numbers, but also based on the basket size. So our growth. So previously, before the lockdown, we used to look at the number of orders per day. And during lockdown, I stopped looking at number of orders per day, and I started looking at number of items ordered per day, because they were not, growing in the same ratio at all. And yeah, so we had to quickly adapt. Our agility was tested, our responsiveness was tested, our empathy was tested, our structure was tested, and I'm glad we came out the other side alive.
Yeah, and I think you did a great job as well. I mean, of course, the awards are testimony to it, but I think one thing that you guys or Kibsons really did was you nailed personalization in e-commerce, which is what a lot of retailers are at this point struggling with. And you managed to have that personal connection with your customers. And I, as a consumer and a customer of Kibsons, also felt that. But now moving on to you, Kalika. We've seen again a lot of shifts happening, but Visa has played a very important role in both the B2B and the B2C space. So how exactly last year did your role evolve in terms of what you had to do for both the customers as well as the businesses you were dealing with?
So firstly, really interesting backstories, listening to all three of you, and really interesting themes there. As Visa, we have the privilege of playing across the entire ecosystem. I've said that on one of the panels before, and I'll say it again, and I'm sure my colleagues say it all the time, because it is true. It's part of what keeps us excited on any given day, because you get to play so many different roles, and each one is equally important and typically moves pretty fast, but post-pandemic and during pandemic has moved even faster, because suddenly it was like all of these pieces have to really move at the speed of thought, at the speed that customers want, and come together. So I'll try and bucket these into a few categories in terms of what we did. And these are the largest areas we play in, specifically when you look at it from a marketing angle. So the first one is really about, I would say, facilitating seamless payments. We'll talk about that theme in a moment. It's at the heart of everything we do. The second theme would be about curating relevant offers to customers, which included Kibsons, by the way, because it was very relevant and remains relevant, and many other such partners. So that's really our B2B2C part, because we are not just B2B, but we are, through our clients, B2B2C. The third aspect is about supporting women-owned businesses. So we did support small businesses as well, but specifically in this forum, I'll talk about the women-owned businesses and what we did to support them. The fourth area is foundational for us, which is ensuring safe and secure payments. So let's start with the first one about seamless payments, and discussing this with a colleague of mine. And there is contactless, of course, but contactless is one form factor. Consumers, as I said in the earlier answer, have moved very rapidly into the payment has to go into the background. It's really everything else that they're doing. They're living life, right? It's not that they go online to think of how am I going to pay for this. It's about what is my purchase going to be. So the seamless payments have become very critical. And according to our back to business study, 9 out of 10 consumers in the UAE have changed the way that they pay. And contactless is at the heart of it. But this needs to really keep growing at pace, not just for contactless, but any new form factor. And it's become so important that one of the aspects shown in the study is also that consumers might actually switch stores. So they're willing to switch stores based on whether a certain kind of payment option exists or does not exist with that retailer. They feel a lot more safe with contactless right now, so it's that. It could be something else in the future. And in that space, suffice to say that our technology and product solutions have enabled us to play a very strong role. So I won't go into details over here, but we're just a short call away, and there's plenty of options available for our retail partners and our issuers as well. The second part I'll talk about is about curating value-centric offers, along with our retail partners, as well as our banks, our issuing partners, to take to consumers. And here what became important was the agility that Halima mentioned, and I think the others mentioned as well, because consumers were changing, they were forced to change. When you're forced to change, where there really isn't too much time to think about a lot of things that we may have done under BAU conditions. So we knew that these changes were coming in terms of not at the speed of the pandemic, but somewhere in the future that many more categories would go online. As an ecosystem driver and enabler, we were also looking to expedite some of these, and then suddenly overnight it just happened. Yeah. What that required us to do was A, curate these offers so that our retailers would get the kind of exposure that they needed as they started investing in these new form factors. B, ensure that we don't spam consumers. Yeah. And therefore, this is where our data, our analytics engines come in terms of propensity modeling and next best offer, to work with our clients and say, how can we best use this data to make relevant options available to our consumers? The third part is about empowering women-owned enterprises. So in one of our earlier forums, I talked about SMEs in general, the Where You Shop Matters campaign, and that continues. So that is a global commitment for us. That is for SMEs in specific, in general. Specifically for women, we have another global platform, which is called She's Next. It's for women entrepreneurs. It's something that we are very proud of, and we are very humbled by when we meet these women entrepreneurs across all walks of life. And it is a global platform, like I said, these are such inspiring stories. So this platform was activated in MENA for the first time last year. And in fact, we had the Nadine from the Dubai Women's Business Council as one of the speakers, and many other inspiring speakers to inspire and to guide existing as well as future aspiring entrepreneurs.
That's amazing, Kalika. I mean, I think this is probably where we need to bring Sara in as well, right? Because I think that is the entire crux of our conversation today, about how to bring women first and how to give them the platform and the opportunity that they need and they deserve. So going back to what I started the whole conversation with, which is women drive about 85% of all purchasing decisions, yet they make up only 25% or even less of the C-suite in retail. So again, this is not a blame game. We're not saying that the men are not giving them a space in the boardroom or on the table or anything, but we're just trying to figure out why this is happening. And Sara, because you've been in that space and you've been closely working in all of these female-led entrepreneurship spaces, and you're also an investor, you probably can give us an insight on this. But just before we get to that, I'd just like to remind all our attendees here today, we are taking questions from you as well. So feel free to put it in the Q&A box, and we will be taking it later in about a few minutes, I think. So Sara, coming back to you, if you want to take that question.
Okay, so basically, I'm going to talk based on my experience. I'm not going to talk based on numbers and research and all that, because that's done by people as well. And we are people and we have our own experiences. But to be honest, like for me, gender was never an issue. I've never looked at the business world or the working world as like, this is a male or female, let's say, industry or whatever. To me, I don't see that. I'm blinded to that thought. So therefore, this was never an issue for me. I never struggled into proving myself because I'm a woman. I just did what I had to do and it happened. Now, if we are going to speak like honestly about the situation, it's a man's world. And to be honest, men are not the reason it's a man's world. Women have a huge contribution to it as well. And a lot of women hate it when I talk about this topic, because I'm going to just say the complete truth, you know? But when and I've spoken about this a lot, but when I sit with a lot of women, see, it all starts from the foundation, okay, of a human being as a child, okay? It's a mindset. But when I sit with other women and I hear them talk to their daughters and they tell them, when you grow up, you are going to meet a man that's going to provide everything for you. You're going to be a princess. You're going to sit down. You're going to do nothing but this. You're going to do this and that and that. The mother is saying it out of love and protection towards the daughter, but that is indirectly building a character in her subconscious mind, saying you have to be dependent. It's a man's world. Men run this world. So you see the contribution of women into that world. It's huge, because we raise generations and men don't raise them. So if we create that generation in that way, we are a big contributors to why women are not part of a lot of industries, why they're not even given an opportunity to be in a lot of industries. Now, this is from a foundation perspective. Let's talk about the work field and how things are there. To be honest, I believe men don't compete with women. We complete each other. I know what I can do as a woman, and I know my mindset capabilities, and I know that I work differently than a male. And I know that there are things I cannot do, they can do better. And there's nothing wrong with completing each other. It's like a puzzle. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not about like, that's why I always argue with women who say, oh, I have an office and we are all females in there. I was like, how are you solving the problem that's happening in the world? We want gender equality. We don't want to overcome things and challenge things. You want a healthy environment, gender diversity, because it brings to the table different mindsets, emotions, rationality, emotional intelligence. There's so many things when you put both genders on the table that they add a lot of value to what you do. another thing why a lot of women are not in like high paid positions or like in positions that they should be in, even in industries that they should be in, is because when a woman knows she has to struggle to get on a certain chair or position in a company, she knows that it's a man's world and she struggled to get there. Therefore, she won't open the door for other females to come because she's scared they'll take her place. I'm talking more about the psychology of what happens in companies, and not more than, I'm not going to talk about graphs and numbers and all that. I'm talking to you about the core of the problem. And it's women who don't allow women to come into these spaces, because, and I don't blame them, because men made them feel insecure about the positions they have. Therefore, they have to fight for it. And to fight for it is to shut the door. So I think this is like a big problem as well in why this happens. And I've witnessed it, and I've interviewed women who are in these positions and why they do that. And we went deep into conversation, and it makes a lot of sense, because no matter how good you are at what you do, if in your heart and mind you don't feel at ease, your performance is affected. So that's very important. But also on the other side, men should also support and help and open doors for women, because we are not a threat. We are literally a completion to the process. We're not a threat. And if one day someone better than me deserves my chair, so be it. Life moves on. We go to different places, different thought processes, different learning experiences. It's not that, oh no, this is mine, like I gotta keep it. And that's why I always say it. I hate the phrase women empowerment. I hate it, because I've never ever in my life seen a bunch of men holding hands saying men empowerment or empower me or I need help or anything like that. Women are strong. And if there's no chair from me on the goddamn table, I'll grab a chair. I don't wait for someone to give me a chair. So we need to grab the power while men have to feel the power. That's what's happening in the industry. And I hope there's a big shift. We all seen a difference. We all seen changes, but I hope this change is consistent until we're equal, not overtaking men. Because then guess what? Then we're gonna have men saying men empowerment and trying to take us. So yeah, this is my like my perspective on this situation. It's more of a psychological thing than just like, oh, numbers and graphs and all that. We're humans in the end.
Absolutely. And amen to everything you said, especially about the whole women empowerment point. And apart from the psychology, I also feel that there's also the upbringing of it, right? Like you mentioned at the beginning, fairy tales, for example, have so much to do with the way we think. When you go back to Cinderella, waiting for the Prince Charming.
Not only that, if you look at our books at school, when I look at my son's books, he's 5 years old, it's always like, Jenny is cooking in the kitchen while Mark is helping his dad outside. Like, why are we preparing a generation for this? Like, whatever we have right now, we built it ourselves. Like, we prepared for this. So to take it down, it's hard to change people who are old and have a certain mindset, but it's very easy to train your children for a better future. So in my house, there's no such thing as a one woman does that, a man does this. We do everything. My son today my son washed the dishes. Like, you have to teach them that it's okay, and women don't belong in women like there's no genre for women in business and work. They can be anywhere. They can be in tech and finance. My friend owns a garage, she's a girl, to fix cars. Like, we don't have to own salons and cupcake stores. Like, we can be anything we want, and the minute we break out of this comfort zone, that's when magic happens.
Absolutely. Again, not subscribing to gender roles, but Donna, just talking about changes in mindsets when we're talking about the retail space specifically. I really genuinely am interested in your entire idea on the discount culture. I know from a consumer point of view, we love our discounts. We love the buy one, get one frees. And that's probably why the Entertainer was so successful and is still as successful. But then I've seen a lot of retailers don't really support that sort of discount mentality. They're more about loyalty and long-term relations and stuff like that. So now that you have jumped from being the discount provider to a mainstream retailer, what is your take on this?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I mean, with the Entertainer, what we did, we incentivized people to go to dine or theme parks or whatnot it was. Saying that though, people feel if they are getting a discount in that space, they generally actually ended up spending more. So that was our research with a lot of the F&B industry. Our job was basically to get them in the door. Saying that though, now as a retailer, as an entertainer, we didn't actually have the OPEX and the COGS and everything that all these merchants had. So I think with the discount and the people and the profitability, etc., over it, I think there's two parts to that. As company owners, certainly during the pandemic, one of our main focuses was, I don't think the people are just the customers. The people are also your colleagues. So it was really important, certainly for me, to keep everybody employed without a pay cut. That was important because it's a snowball effect. Because if you unfortunately have to make people redundant, which I also get, or you give them salary decreases, then they're not spending. And that could be retail, and then they're not spending, and then the retailer unfortunately then has to go on sale or go broke or whatever it may be. So I actually think the foundation was to almost like to really try and keep as many staff as you could, and to pay as many people for that snowball effect. Saying that though, as now a retailer with discounts, I think the price needs to be fair in whatever that you're doing. And the consumer actually has to also realize that. They can't just keep getting discounts and paying cheap for things that are actually quality products. So you have to pay for what you get. And yes, different things have different margins on it, and you have to balance that out eventually. And you have to be smart, I think, as a retailer. You never would discount your core products. Why would you discount a product that's always selling? So you would never discount that, but you would discount some of your distress rate or things that are not moving. So it's just pretty much a balancing act, what you have to do. And at the end of the day, you have to believe in your product. I always say, don't drop your pants too early. You know, people do different things, different reasons. People might go on sale as owners for cash flow. They might need the cash flow. They might need products. They might want to get rid of stock. There's so many different things. But at the end of the day, fair, believe in your product, pay people what they're owed and what they're deserved, and that'll keep everything going around.
Speaking of fair pricing though, Halima, I know this is one thing that we've spoken about in the past. We saw a lot of dodgy players in the market coming out and taking advantage of the situation, especially when they were in the essential items category, be it masks, sanitizers, even groceries. At that point, we saw that a lot of your competitors itself were raising prices, but we've noticed that you didn't do that, at least during the pandemic phase is what we noticed as RetailME. So how important at that point was it for you to place people over profits? And did that sort of affect your profit though?
Hi, that's a fantastic question. I'm going to link it back to where we all started and what Kibsons' core strengths really were. So we've been, one of the, we can say one of the top importers and distributors in the fresh produce industry for so long, right? What it actually means is that, for so many years, we had those sustainable relationships with farmers across the planet. And when we were the first point of import and food contact in the country. And then from us, it would sort of, go down to other wholesalers and retailers in the industry. So if you think about it, when we started the e-commerce and we said, look, you've got premium produce at wholesale prices, what that actually meant, even back then, even before the lockdown, was that being the first point of contact, and if you think about the cold chain and the freshness, we are delivering that, that really super efficient quality and pricing both. But when it came down to lockdown, right, our ethos, our whole point of business was completely tested. And we not, our management was not about to have a brain surgery to change suddenly and say, all right, let's take advantage. We in fact went extreme on our ethos to say, no, this is the time to not take advantage of our consumers. This is the time to support them in especially if, that's your core business competitive advantage. And that's your passion. And that's the purpose of why you were there. We did everything the other way around. I mean, the pricing and the profits did not even occur to us during the lockdowns. All we cared about was availability, calming people down, telling them that don't worry, the food is not going to run out. I mean, we had personal messages and from family and friends, and I said, listen, guys, worst comes worst, the Kibsons stores will be open. You can come in, and they were like, okay. And then that news sort of trickled in. So we were trying to bring mental peace at a time of so much insecurity going on, because when you're not in the food industry, you really don't know how things function behind the scenes, and you kind of speculate, right? That's how the panic buying even started. So our job was to communicate to our consumers and friends that there is no need for panic buying, because the cargo is open and we are here. We're not going to close. We're going to deliver. We may not make it today, but we'll be there tomorrow, the day after, 7 days, and give us a few days, and we'll come back to free same day. So let's just keep everybody going. And Kibsons never will take advantage of its consumers. That's not why we are here. We started to make healthy eating really affordable and practical and convenient, so, and our team, even today in our pricing policy, I think it stands out. I think the reason why people come back to Kibsons is because once they've done apple to apple comparison with other competitors, they kind of realize, oh my God, Kibsons is actually cheaper. I'm saving money. So people, whether it's internally in Kibsons and the team, it's people, they matter to us. They've been, our staff has been with us forever. Once they join Kibsons, they kind of feel so good, they're just so happy being here. And it's important to be happy where you work. Everything is not about salary at the end of the month. So internally, externally, we are all about people.
Amazing. I think now it's time to open the floor for questions, and we have received a lot of questions. So I think I'm gonna give it over to you, Justina.
Thanks, Shruthi. Okay, so one of our members from the audience, Manisha Dixit, asks, in such uncertain times when the past may not be able to provide insight, it sounds like passion, empathy were your guiding forces. How do you think this will impact decisions going forward? What do you think will be the role of data going forward? So who would like to take this question?
I'm happy to give a comment.
Sure, please.
I think passion and empathy are key with this, but I also think to keep moving, they're great, but you also need grit, you need to be visionary, and you need to be extremely agile. So they're the three things as company owners, entrepreneurs, and even senior management or just staff, you actually need to have that as well, because you can have empathy for people and you 100% need that, and you have to love what you do. But if you don't have the oomph in you to get out, no risk, no reward, you've got to get off your butt basically, and you have to make things happen. You can't just watch things happen because no one's going to do it for you. So a lot of it comes to grit to move forward with it as well.
So true, Donna.
I also agree with Donna. It's in what's happening around the world, sympathy and empathy is important, especially as a leader, because if you treat your team right, they will, when team works, dream works. And if you treat them right in hard times, like even through my hard times right now with my companies, a lot of my staff stood by me and didn't get a pay for a couple of months until I paid them back again. So leadership pays back, and management is fading. Micromanagement is fading. But at the same time, you're not running a charity. You have to balance, because you have to survive, you have to provide, you have to also keep the business going. As Donna said, you have to have that power in you to keep going, because you're the one sailing the whole boat with everyone in it.
Thanks, Sara.
I agree. Passion and empathy within the team and also with your clients, because clients will ultimately, as a B2B to C business, like I said, clients will see that and they'll react to it. So that you could be doing a job and you could be doing it right, but the extra oomph that passion and empathy bring into the interactions and into the contribution to their business, that cannot be replicated. One more point in terms of data, the role of data, I think, as was asked in the question. So for consumers, the passion and empathy will translate ultimately into behavior. The question is about being able to predict some of those trends early on and be able to react to them, which is not always possible, as the pandemic showed us. But to be generally in the right direction, I think one has to still be guided by data and try and be less reactive and more on top of things, which is where the agility comes in, as described by the three entrepreneurs on the panel, that be ready to make quick changes and don't be wedded, as Sara was saying, to one particular position, saying, this is all I do. And then if this doesn't work, what else? So that agility also has to apply in large corporates like ours. And that's what we're learning.
And actually, I have
Thanks,
a
Kalika.
follow-up just on what Kalika said, right? It's about data, and I think that is where the conversation is headed to right now. And my question is for you, Kalika. We've seen a lot of organizations in 2020 throwing out these buzzwords, which is, total digital transformation, AI, VR, XR, and all of that. And in a lot of cases, it's just been a fad just because everyone is doing it or my competitors are doing it. I need to do it as well, but they aren't quite getting it right. So how is it that they can move beyond, using these as just merely buzzwords? How can this actually convert to real value?
So absolutely, these are buzzwords, but I think a lot of how do buzzwords happen? It's when a lot of people start moving into that space and experimenting, right? Which is a good thing. It's a great thing because that's really how we learn. It's kind of like going back to Sara's example again. So that's how the corporate world learns, or really any universe learns in terms of what works, what doesn't, what should we leave behind, what was good for like yesterday, okay, we did a small pilot, doesn't work, let's move to the next thing. So AI, machine learning, all of these aspects, they have existed for a while, but now they've come of age. And we use a lot more AI than we even realize. So within Visa, what we have learned is, and we've been working on it for a few years, as have many people within this space, there is a lot of data being collected through consumer behavior, what I just referenced earlier in answer to that question. And the important thing is not just about collating that data, but making the right connections so that we can provide personalized content. Think back to your Thursday or Friday evening, right? When you start getting spammed by all the offers. Some of them are so relevant that you need no more motivation, and that's it, there you go. You click and say, I have to avail of this offer. Like the one we were discussing earlier with Donna, right? So Friday, I'll be at your store because of what you mentioned earlier in the warm-up. At the same time, there's a whole host of offers, which is like, why are they sending this to me? This is not relevant. So in that space is where we've been working hard with our clients and our retailers to connect that ecosystem, to use consumer behavioral data anonymized, very important to say, because personal data has to be handled with care and ethically. So to use anonymized data and be able to hyper-target, another buzzword, but hyper-target offers to the right consumer, because in the environment that we live in, we can actually segment down to a segment of one, which is not always feasible, financially feasible for retailers. So we segment down to a reasonable segment size where it makes good business sense. But this is really one area where we found it makes sense to use AI and machine learning, because we're using your own data to inform us what is the next best offer for you. If you just had a coffee, maybe it's not coffee. Maybe your next purchase is a fresh juice, right? So that's a very, very oversimplified answer. But I think it's not one size fits all. It's different strokes for different folks, because every industry has multiple use cases. Just within Visa, we have multiple use cases. Across different retail categories, we have different use cases. But this one tool, which we have launched for our retailers and issuers to come together using customer behavior data, is what has given us the benefit of AI at scale.
Absolutely. But one thing, again, one of the buzzwords you mentioned right now, I'd like to catch on is the hyper target and how communication is happening with the customers. And I think a lot of retailers have been relying more on the non-conventional means, one of which is influencers. Donna, when we started this conversation, you said that one of the Bollywood celebrities was out there wearing the swimwear. And I think that is where we can bring the conversation, because she's out there unknowingly endorsing your brand as an influencer, being an influencer for your brand. So would you also rely a lot on social commerce as part of your e-commerce going forward?
Yeah, look, I think influencers are key to retail. If somebody looks good in your, I'm talking about my product now, really, say call it swimwear, resort wear. If somebody looks good in your product, then you want to look like them in a way. So if somebody is wearing your product and it's an influencer, well, if it's good enough for them, then, oh, it's good enough for me as well. So it's a bit of a shame that it is like that at the moment, but there are minimal ways at this point where you can market. So influencers, we have done some influencers for Caha, Capo, but saying that, the Bollywood star actually came and she bought. I didn't actually know who she was, in fairness, at that point. So we have had a lot of people come in and buy, and you know, that's really exciting for us, because they like the product. And that's one big thing to me. The influencer, if you're going to get an influencer, they have to fit your product. It's not just how many followers they've got, because you actually need quality more than quantity, and they have to fit that profile. So if we were doing influencers, we would get someone that loves the product, that would actually buy the product, that would wear it, not just, hey, I'm getting paid to do this, I'm going to do 2 posts. So that's the challenging part about influencers. And I just don't adhere to any of that. If they don't love it and they're not the right fit, then why give it away?
Absolutely. Halima, coming to you, I don't think you need influencers to market or endorse your products. However, what I would like to ask you is about your business, right? In terms of online grocery market or the business itself, it's always been a logistical challenge as it shifts more of the work and the costs to grocers instead of the customers. But what were the major pain points that were magnified last year, and how did you manage to overcome those?
Yeah, I was smiling at the influencers because it's so important for us as well, right? Like we have it's about quality, and you don't pay someone just for 2 posts. Luckily, fortunately, we get so much love organically now that I have this year kind of moved away from that and having all these non-sponsored posts. Hope people realize and understand that this is genuine love, and they can relate to one another within the community as moms or chefs or. But in terms of our pain points in this industry, I think, and I'm going to connect this back to data as well, because we actually use the data to address our pain points more than sort of tell people. Not saying it's right or wrong, but there's a lot of data that is being used from a demand side to to get a pull. So and it works really well when it's things not really fresh produce. So for instance, you buy a tennis racket, and you say, oh, would you like to buy a tennis ball as well? Doesn't work quite right when someone wants fresh mint and you don't have it, and then you're like, okay, how do I know what to offer you instead of fresh mint? So for us, I think within this e-commerce grocery shopping, the biggest pain point is availability, because it's very frustrating that you have an order for about 40-50 items and maybe 8 or 10 actually turn up to your door. And I think that's what we really put our focus on. So our target is to achieve over 99% accuracy when it comes to delivery in terms of the number of items you ordered, plus within the time zone that you ordered. So to achieve that, we first use our data internally to help us navigate the challenge of, availability, to get exactly what you ordered, the quality and the price, without saying, sorry, it's not available. That's the first one. And the delivery timings, because I think that once everybody talks about the consumer experience, but the real experience is when you open the door, let the box in, and open to find that, yes, I have everything I needed for today's meal, right? And I think that's the point where that satisfaction drives the customer back onto the portal, because they have a level of trust in that moment that, yes, I can trust this particular app. So I think at the moment, a lot of our data is driven for us, and we really do. I mean, it's no point data throwing numbers at you and your team does not take it seriously or does not respond to it. So, and especially with the complexity of how nature changes across the world, and Dubai being so fortunate to be in the center of the planet. So, we don't see seasons and fruits here like other countries, right? Like if you want a strawberry, you get it from all over the world. So the challenges of how to make sure shipments arriving from all over the world are constantly communicated. And if something is out of stock, you tell the customer at the time of shopping, hey, it's out of stock, don't order. And I know it's disappointing then, but they do appreciate that. So that's where we drive our internal intelligence to address these sort of pain points, that how to be open in communication to our customer from the point of order to the point of delivery, if that makes sense.
For sure, everything you said today has made a lot of sense to us, Halima. Kalika, I'm coming to you right now, and we're moving to the concluding parts of our conversation. So just in closing, if under a minute, you can just summarize for us. A lot of people have said that COVID-19 has been the best CTO for a lot of organizations. At this point, how do you maintain that acceleration that has happened in 2020 instead of going back to our old ways?
So I'll root this really in the brand purpose, because technology for any brand exists to serve. The example that Halima just gave, right? It exists to serve. Therefore, going back to our brand vision is really about economies that include everyone, everywhere, uplift everyone, everywhere, something that we are intensely committed to and very proud of, and we live that in everything we do. So keeping that in mind, it's really first point about the technology piece is to make sure that we have inclusion in terms of this change in payment. So whether it's contactless in the more advanced economies or whether it is in the emerging economies about scan to pay for the really small ticket sizes, something that I've seen traveling back regularly to India, how rapidly that has changed. We've done that in Pakistan and in Egypt. So continuing at all ends of the spectrum and not just going where it's easier to do, that is something that at least we remain committed to and will keep driving. And in doing that, there are the parallel pillars which go hand in hand: consumer education, reassurance on fraud and security, seamless experience, which I talked about earlier, as well as marketing has a large and responsible role to play with all the partners across the ecosystem. And that's really what will keep us, doing the right things for the right reasons.
Amazing. Thanks so much for that, Kalika. I'm coming to you now, Sara. Are you still here with us? I don't think I see Sara in the conversation. All right, I think we'll just come back to Sara. But Halima, let me come to you now for the closing part of our conversation. In 2020, we've seen a lot of conversations happening about competition versus collaboration. You, again, at this point, you've been competing with the big league players, top league players, be it the Capo, Spinnies, the ones who've got bigger operations, etc. Going forward, what route are you going to go for? Do you think you're going to be competing with them, or are you going to find a way to sort of, work with them?
I really smiled through this question because it's very interesting that you said that, they are our competition. And I think perhaps even they have, I've heard that they also believe that, Kibsons is a growing competition to them, right? But the reality is that if you talk to anyone inside Kibsons, we don't see them as competition at all. And I don't think that we really see any of the brick and mortar retailers, supermarkets as our competition. We're so different, right? From day one, we've been so focused on health and healthy eating and no added hormones and no MSG. And these are very big statements that we want to, these are our values. And you can't find many of the products that you would find in a classic supermarket, for example, Coca-Cola at Kibsons, because we are about health and we're not about being a supermarket. So in that example itself, are we really a competition? I don't know, and I don't think so. So I think for us, the topic will always remain health. The topic will always remain better quality. We are here to give better affordable value. And in some of the segments, yes, we do come across as competing, but we're trying to find things that you wouldn't find in a normal supermarket to live a healthy, affordable life. So in that sense, I think we'll just carry on doing what we've done for the past few years and get better and better at, with the vision that we had in mind and what we started with.
And good luck to you in that journey. We are going to be with you all throughout the way. Donna, finally coming to you now. You're in the luxury segment again. You've made this shift this year. What do you see is the future of this market? Are you a little tensed, a little worried, considering how it has been for this particular niche last year? And what is your contingency plan then?
Whoa. I would say, firstly, I'd say we're not in the luxury market. We're more in the mid luxury. And look, for us, I suppose it's certainly on a personal point of view, it's for me getting back to my roots. Because, with Entertainer, we had over 300 staff, 15 countries. We grew over 18 years into, this multi-million-dollar company. And now I'm really pretty much going back to scratch with Caha, Capo, which I absolutely love. It's that family industry. So I think with that, one of our main challenges is it's a startup, again, so it's getting your brand into the market. I think what people need to understand going forward with the mid to high-end luxury market is there are still people with money, right? It's not all doom and gloom. People have to understand, again, they pay for what they get. We spend a lot of money on OPEX, on COGS. We manufacture out of state-of-the-art swimwear factories. So when people come to us and buy something, they're actually paying for what they get. And I'm very much a believer of that. If you're coming for 100 dirham swimwear, don't come to us. But if you're coming for something that is going to fit you for the next 3 years and the quality and the fabric's going to be good and you want to pay a bit extra, then come to us. So I think the future of the retail and the luxury or the mid-luxury is you just got to keep plodding away. You know, it's like we said, I think Kalika was saying, you know, 2022 is the year, 2021 is the investment and survival and the vision and the expansion. And I think that's what we all have to focus on. And yes, in retail, it's getting it right. There's so many things that we need to look at. And certainly with us, you can't please everybody as well. Everyone has different body shapes. Everyone wants different things. Everyone has a different budget. And you can't please everybody, but we try and be a little bit of a one-stop shop, men's, women's, kids, but we can only have so many size ranges. And that's the same with everybody. So look, I think it's patience moving forward. It's look at your spend. And as a consumer, what's important for you to have? You know, is it a jumper now because it's winter? Is it swimwear because you're going on holiday? Is it fresh produce from Kibsons because you want to keep your family healthy? And that's what you really need to look at.
I don't think there could have been a better way to close that. You've touched all of us, but Justina, we've missed you.
I'm right here. So I must say this was a phenomenal session. I think everybody would agree that there was positive, powerful energy in the room. So thank you, Visa, for supporting this very special initiative. Enormous thanks to all our amazing speakers for contributing so generously. And we thank our delightful audience for joining us today. And if you'd like to be in the know of the movers and shakers of retail, the female ones, please do look out for our 50 most influential women leaders list coming up in March. And until our next roundtable in 2 weeks, it's goodbye from all of us. Thank you.